Hey gamers, welcome back to the Fixxzz. Today we're spotlighting an indie title that immediately caught our attention with its visuals, its name, and its overall vibe. This is Parasite Mutant, a game that wears its inspirations proudly and doesn't shy away from leaning into it. Right out of the gate, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, the combat feels very much like Parasite Eve. If you're familiar with that blend of RPG systems layered over combat that still feels tactical and deliberate, you're going to recognize the DNA almost immediately. This isn't a pure action shooter, but it's also not a traditional menu-only JRPG either. It sits somewhere in between, and that's where things get interesting. Parasite Mutant is developed by IceSitruuna Games, a small Chinese indie developer, and considering the team size, the ambition on display here is impressive. This is clearly a passion project, one that prioritizes atmosphere, tone, and style over flashy production values. You can tell the developers had a specific vision in mind, and they committed to it fully. That commitment goes a long way in making the game feel cohesive. One of the strongest aspects of Parasite Mutant is its visual presentation. The art direction leans heavily into a retro-inspired, unsettling aesthetic. Environments feel worn, hostile, and strange, while character designs embrace mutation, distortion, and body horror themes without going overboard. We genuinely enjoyed the based character design. The protagonists and enemies alike stand out visually, and nothing feels overly generic. There's a sense of identity here that's often missing from smaller indie RPGs. This isn't a game trying to look pretty. It's trying to look distinct, and it succeeds. Let's talk combat, because this is where expectations really matter. Parasite Mutant's combat is very similar to Parasite Eve in how it blends RPG mechanics with a more active combat flow. It's not a twitch shooter, but it also doesn't feel like a static old-school turn-based system either. There's a sense of positioning, pacing, and decision-making that goes beyond simply selecting attack from a menu. Encounters feel methodical and tense, especially early on, and success depends on understanding how your abilities interact rather than just raw stats. If you're coming in looking for that Parasite Eve-style experience, where combat feels strategic, deliberate, and slightly unconventional, you'll likely feel right at home. Progression in Parasite Mutant is straightforward but satisfying. You're not drowning in systems or overwhelmed with complexity. Instead, the game focuses on gradual growth, ability management, and learning how to deal with increasingly dangerous encounters. This is a slower-paced experience, and that won't appeal to everyone. But for players who enjoy taking their time, experimenting with builds, and soaking in atmosphere, the pacing works in the game's favor. It's more about survival and adaptation than power fantasy. Parasite Mutant maintains a consistently eerie tone throughout. The music, environments, and enemy design all reinforce a sense of unease. This isn't horror in the jump scare sense, but more of a lingering discomfort that stays with you as you play. It fits the Parasite Eve inspiration perfectly, and helps the game stand out in a crowded indie RPG space. So, does it suck? No, it doesn't. Parasite Mutant knows exactly what it wants to be. It delivers strong visuals, memorable character design, and combat that clearly channels Parasite Eve without feeling like a cheap imitation. It's not a game for everyone, but for fans of atmospheric RPGs with unconventional combat systems, it's absolutely worth a look, especially considering it comes from a small indie team. IceSitruuna Games has put together something thoughtful, stylish, and confident in its identity. Parasite Mutant may not reinvent the genre, but it respects its influences and builds something uniquely its own on top of them. And that alone makes it worth talking about. And that's the Fixxzz, the pulse of the indie scene.